You are listening to episode 122 of the Africana Woman podcast, Help Me Forgive, with Lydia Mwansa. My name is Chulu, your host. Let's go. Hello, beautiful. How were your Women's Day celebrations? Like, tell me all about it, okay? I was so happy to see a lot of people go out for marathons, walks, aerobics, and other fitness related activities. Like, I'm so proud of you guys. Oh my gosh, you make me so proud. I had a fabulous time. My conversations, the platforms that I joined to support were amazing. Okay, amazing. All right, now I have to give a big shout out to Bidemi Adedire for successfully hosting Lunch and Learn in Abuja, Nigeria. She is the source of this concept. I know you've seen it, like you've seen me advertise it for Zambia, but the actual Orijaba, the original is Bidemi, okay? So I was so excited to adapt her concept to Zambia. Now, there may even be one in Nairobi, Kenya. Ha! Stay tuned for details. Anywho, literally, if you guys want to organize one, I don't care what country you're in, just reach out to me and we'll get you started. Okay? All right. So, in a nutshell, the Lunch and Learn concept is about bringing a small, select group of ambitious, professional women who are looking to expand their network with like minded women, right? We spend the day sharing ideas, learning from each other, and possibly finding ways to collaborate. There is power when women come together. We had one in Ndola at Insobe Lodge, or Insobe Camp, I should say. And would you believe we sat and talked for 6 hours straight? 6 hours straight. I said, guys, what's the time? They're like, oh, it's time to go. I was like, wait a minute. Where did the time fly? There were no awkward moments, no weirdness. There was so much to be said. I learned a lot, even as the organizer. The experience exceeded my expectations. So in Zambia, we are going to 6 cities. So there's Lusaka, Livingston, Mongu, Solwezi, and Kitwe that are left. The truth is, I'm also using this as an excuse to travel around Zambia. So, I mean, if not, why not? And then the next city is Lusaka. We are lunching at the exquisite Lilai Lodge on Saturday, 30th March. It is already 50% sold out. So please do not hesitate to get your ticket like, oh no, I'll get it later, I'll get it later. Okay, you'll be waiting. You continue later. Okay, so go to the show notes or visit africanawoman.com. You can even book ahead for the other cities, which will be in other months. So we do one each month, okay? So go check out the dates, go check out the locations. Although, you guys, you know me, I like things. I like things. So the places I selected are special, okay? All right, let's talk about today's conversation. So there's a trigger warning. There is a mention of sexual abuse. Now, a brilliant young lady wrote an article on the Africana Woman blog called I Find Beauty in My Scars. Her name is Lydia Mwansa. She's also a member of our book club. We love you. Okay. And as I read her story, I could feel pieces of my heart breaking, disintegrating at every turn of that story. Yo, guys. Yo. So we put out a call out for people to be podcast guests, and she answered. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be so, so difficult. But when we had that conversation, I was I was in awe of how much she is a light. She is 20 years old and one of the wisest women I have ever met. Quite frankly, she reminds me of Maya Angelou. So, yes, there is mention of sexual abuse, But there is so much more that is worth hearing. Enjoy. Lydia Mwansa is a second-year student at the University of Zambia studying law. She is very passionate about writing and is currently working on 4 books that she is looking forward to publish in the first 4 months of 2024. Lydia is a leader under Kingdom Warriors, which is a faith-based organization in addition to Intentional Growth Network, submitting under Sir Chewe, her mentor. She is also a leader for Academic Management Resource for Winners Chapel Campus Fellowship. Lydia loves reading, writing, baking, cooking, and many other things to mention but a few. I am so excited to welcome Lydia to the Africana Woman Mic. Hi, Lydia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Okay, so my first question, I always like to ask this. It is, what is your favorite childhood memory?
My favorite childhood memory is when each and every time the people for ice cream would always pass, and they would always ring the bells, passing and the like. Then each and every time they would pass, I'd go to my dad's younger brother, and then I would tell him that I want ice cream, and he would always get me ice cream each and every time. For me, that's my favorite childhood memory.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet. So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little bit of Mansa, a little bit of Ndola, and more of Lusaka.
Ah, I see. Which one's your favorite?
My favorite has been Lusaka.
Why?
I feel like it's a place that where transformation began in my life. I feel like it's a place where I really came out of my comfort zone and explored new ideas. So for me, it's been my favorite place.
Okay, that's good. All right, so today we're going to be tackling a conversation that not many people talk about in open and, may find uncomfortable, but I think it's a very important conversation to have, right? So I would love for you to give us an introduction to your story of however much you want to share.
All right. So basically, my story was at the age of 7 years old. I was sexually abused by my cousin, and it was also in that period of time. Actually, before the abuse, that's when my biological father died. So just after he died, 4 months, and I was sexually abused. So for me, it was a traumatic experience because it was something that I was least expecting in that particular moment. So there was a moment where I went through depression. There was a moment where I just didn't know what was happening in my life. I lost myself. I lost the child in me. I never had self-esteem. I lost my confidence. I literally lost everything in that particular moment. So I was just growing up being that particular person who's very quiet, that particular person who's very reserved. I thought I was not worthy. So even at times when opportunities would come, I would always turn them down because I would feel there's always a better person who would be put into that position. But then along the journey, after I gave my life to Christ, I found healing. And it's something that was happening step by step. And after finding that healing, I was like, thank you, God, that you have healed me. And what really brought me to Africana Woman is the fact that I came to realize that many women you discover have really undergone sexual abuse in some way or the other, and many women have kept quiet. That is why you find that there are certain women you find who are very bitter, and we begin to judge them. This particular person is bitter, and yet that bitterness is coming out of a place of anger because there are certain things that they've gone through and they've been unable to share them and openly tell their story. So the moment that I saw um, what helped me, or what drove me to really participate in this blog, was the fact that I realized that many women out there are unable to speak up. But then if at least they find that somebody is able to speak up, somebody has gone through that, it might create that platform where, like, okay, you know what, I'm not alone, someone else has gone through this and they found healing, I can also find healing.
Thank you so much for being brave to share your story. We are alike because I also went through sexual abuse, and it's something that I've talked about in open before. I want to find out from you, when you were 7, like you mentioned, you know, your father had passed away, and then your cousin took advantage of the situation. So in that moment, were you close to your mother, or what? Did you tell anyone about it?
I didn't tell anyone about it because I feel like growing up, I was very close to my father. So when he passed on, it was like I was losing a part of me that would really understand me, someone who would really show up for me. So it was in that moment where I was like, okay, so this has happened. And I just no longer felt secure because after that passed on, I was like, I'm not secure, and that happened. So it made me even feel more insecure. I didn't really feel that I could trust anyone to really open up to that extent, because I thought they would maybe take advantage of that situation. Maybe I would be told to keep quiet. Maybe they wouldn't understand, especially the fact that they wouldn't understand. I thought that they wouldn't understand. So I was like, what's the purpose of me really opening up when no one won't even be able to understand?
You know, with your story, I know that there were 5 more attempts, right?
Yes, yes.
So in that period, you've mentioned that your demeanor changed, like your personality changed. You became very quiet. Was there anything else that changed about your personality?
Yes. Another aspect was anger. During that moment, I developed anger. You'd find maybe someone is just talking to me in a very normal way, I would respond rudely. You would find that what normal kids usually do, maybe watching TV, um, spending time with their friends. For me, it was a moment where I couldn't spend time with my friends, and watching TV was an issue because I just wanted to be in a place that felt secure. In that moment, I just felt like I'm the only person who can make myself feel secure.
Yeah, was there anyone around you who noticed that change?
Yes, 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 yes. But then the change mostly at the everyone thought the change happened due to the loss of my dad. So they really just thought maybe after some time she'll really get over it. But then the time that they really noticed that change was, I think it was 2016, 2017. That's when the change was, like, that's when I entered into deep depression. So at that moment, they noticed the change. My my dad, my father's younger brother, as well as my mom, his wife, they noticed that change in 2016 and 2017, because at that moment it, like, it reached the peak. Yeah.
When you were, I think it was 14 years old, and I think you were going into grade 8.
A lot happened. Like, there was another attempt in sexual abuse at that moment. So it's like it triggered the old wound, and in that moment I felt like the wound that was already created has been brought up, and not really even that aspect. For me, it was an aspect where I reached, I'm like, is any person who looks at me just, I felt in that moment like every person who looks at me just sees a sex object in me. So in that moment, it really became hard for me, because I was like, why is it that every person that comes will try either to attempt or maybe say words and the like. So for me, it really broke me down, because in that moment I was feeling like, you know what, I think the only thing that people look at me when they see me is a sex object. And it was in that moment I was struggling with self-esteem. So like I didn't even think that I'm worth anything. I didn't think that I have any value. I just thought that, you know what? I think maybe they are right. Maybe for them to think that way, maybe there's something that they've seen in me that might trigger them thinking that way about me and trying to only see someone they can have sex in me each and every time they see me.
When was the turning point for you? When did you begin to really now start thinking that, okay, maybe there was a different way that I can think about myself?
For me, the turning point was, I think, 2016, 2017. 2016, 2017, in as much as these years were very depressing to me, they also brought about a turning point. Was in 2017 was the year where I gave my life to Christ. In the moment, even though I was born again in that moment, I didn't really think it was a big deal. I just thought it was one of those things. But then after I passed my grade nine, I passed my grade nine because I initially thought I wouldn't pass. So after I passed my grade nine, went to grade 10, um, through reading the Bible and just writing, I would write how I'm feeling, I would express how I'm feeling. And for me, the Bible became a mirror. It's like I realized that, okay, I'm worthy. Like, I'm worthy. Like, God loves me. I'm worth much more. There are many things that God has placed in me. And something that was really outstanding for me and that really changed everything was there was a day that I sat and I asked God, that day when I was 7 years ago, you were there. Yes, nobody was there to protect me. Nobody was there to make me feel secure. But God, you were there. So if He had allowed it to happen, then there was a purpose that it had happened. So it was in that moment I realized that I cannot let a one day instance that happened to me determine the rest of my life. I cannot continue being someone who's filled with so much bitterness, someone who's filled with so much hatred. There are certain things that I need to let go if I really want to be that person that I want to be. So for me, writing became a part of me and it became something that I really used for healing, and also reading the Bible helped me a lot because the more that I read God, the more I knew who God said, the more I knew what God said about me, and the more I believed that, the more I gained confidence in myself, the more my self-esteem began to come back.
Like, how did you begin to start trusting people again? Because I mean, after being through all of that, and especially at a very young age, it's very difficult to look at people and say, I trust them. But was there anyone who started like helping you to build that trust in people?
That particular person is my dad's younger brother's wife, my mom. I feel she's someone who constantly kept showing up in my life, where there were moments where I'm really low, and you would, no matter how much you would, try to distance yourself, try to close yourself up, she would always try to reach out. You would find she would do just simple gestures. Maybe she cooks breakfast for you when you're going to school, and for me, those were really outstanding because each and every time I would look at my sister like, why is she making me this? At times, and you would find that maybe how you would respond to her would be wrongly, but she would always be there. She would always show up. She would always be that person who's like, I might not understand what you've been through, but I'm always here if you want to talk to someone. So for me, she's someone who really helped me begin to believe in people again. Yes.
I'm so glad you have her in your life. Did you tell her about what happened to you? And then what was that conversation like?
Yes, I had told her. For me, that conversation was because I remember that I kept on bathing because I was in that moment. It was like the bitterness that I had been keeping for all these years. It's like in that moment it was coming out for me. For me, basically, what actually happened is that there was a day that I went to school. Then there was someone who came from Dreams, so Dreams, the organization Dreams, and she was talking about sexual abuse, sexual assault, and she said if you had undergone any of those, you should reach out. So for a long time, when she said that, I was like, okay, I'll reach out. That's how I put her. I had a simple conversation with her, and that's how the conversation that I had with her, it's like it brought about it took me back in that moment when I was 7 years old. So I remember going home that day. I was very broken. I just felt like the incident had happened again. Because I remember the moment I reached home, I went, started bathing, and I was scrubbing very hard. I constantly kept on scrubbing very hard because in that particular moment I was feeling like I'm dirty, I'm not worthy, like I'm dirty. So for me, bathing, it was like I'm trying to clean myself. I'm trying to clean myself. I really took long in that bathroom. I really took long in that bathroom. So what actually happened? So the moment that I came out, my mom asked me, and she was like, "What's wrong? How have you been? Like, what's wrong?" So as usual, I wanted to avoid the question, but for me, it was like I was already in that moment. So she constantly kept on persisting, and finally, I opened up, and it was that moment because for me, the opening up, that was the time that I cried. I think from the time the incident had happened, it's like I was keeping everything up. But it was like in that moment, I just let out everything that I was carrying, and I felt like there was a burden that was lifted over me. And for me, that conversation really brought about healing because I was like, you can really express yourself, and someone is out there, they'll be able to hear
How have you moved forward? I'm assuming that you still see your cousin.
you. It's been a while. I think ever since the incident, I've never seen him before.
Really?
Yes.
And then the other people that attempt and whatnot.
The other people that had attempted, most of them were in Ndola. Most of the attempts took place in Ndola. So after moving from Ndola, so it was like I've lifted off the burden and I moved on. And what really helped me moving on is I reach at a point where I would always pray. For me, I would always do this where I'll pray and I'll mention those people's names and I'll be like, God help me forgive. God help me forgive. God help me forgive. And the more I would make it a prayer point, the more I would pray that God should help me forgive. The forgiveness just started happening within. It just started happening within. It just started happening within. And above everything else, I just realized that if I myself in achieving the goals that I've set, the plans that I have for my life, I realized that healing was the best solution in that particular moment.
So in this, like right now, you've forgiven all of them.
Yes, yes, yes. The forgiveness has taken place.
How do you think these sorts of things can be avoided? Because it's very complicated, in the sense that, okay, yes, it's a relative.
Yes.
So is that relative reported? You know what I mean? But how do we as society, how do you think we as society can avoid such situations?
I feel how as society we can avoid such situations. I feel we can bring about sensitization where, I feel it's a topic that we rarely talk about, but then we know that people are really being affected. So in as much as we would bring up about uh, organizations for women empowerment, many a program for sensitization that's just focusing on sexual abuse, sensitizing people, and also just creating a platform as society where someone who's sexually abused is able to come out, express themselves without feeling that they are going to be judged in any way or the other. Because you find that many times why society fails to really come out and express themselves is because they feel like, well, when I express myself, how are people going to see me? Maybe the way that they used to see me will be different from how they see me now. Like, we need to stop this stigma. If we're able to stop this stigma, even the perpetrators, the number of perpetrators is going to reduce because it's something that we'll be talking about. Because you find that why perpetrators are still out there and there are a lot is because it's something that when it happens, instead of us really creating that safe platform, we hide it, or instead of us trying to help the person, we hide it, and we just say, and there are many cases, especially in law, where you encounter where someone was abused and then the guy just pays the girl's family, and the issue just goes like that. So you find most instances that family members, instead of really them being there to help you out and speak out, they are telling you, ah no, just leave it, just push it away. And also I feel the other way that we can reduce such from happening, I feel as parents, I feel parents should also play an active role in their children's life. Because I feel, there are many parents who are present in their children's lives financially, but then in an aspect of emotional availability, they are not really there. So you find that even if something happens to a child, or even if someone tries to attempt to harass a child, she doesn't have that safe space where she can go to and say, okay, this one wanted to do this to me. But then if parents create that comfortable environment where a child can come back from school and come home and say, okay, this is how I spend my day, and tell her parent like that, I feel it will really create that trust between parents and children, and it will even reduce the number of perpetrators.
That's so true. What is your message to somebody? Because you know what? I think there are times that, especially when it happens in childhood, if somebody experiences a sexual trauma, I think our minds sort of they block out that event, right? They're protecting us, where they block out that this has happened to you. They block out that, there was something scary that happened to you, right? And there are people that will grow up, as they're growing, they can't even say the words that, I was sexually abused. Like they're in total denial, but at the same time, they're still having the effects of what happened to them, because what happened to them made them feel unsafe, right? So their body and their mind is always trying to find a way to protect them and keep them safe. In your case, you became very angry, and your attitude was one where you're like the tough person, and you're trying to protect yourself and stuff. So for somebody who has been through this in the past, but has not yet addressed it as an adult, what would your advice be?
I feel healing comes when you begin to face something that you're scared of. At times you find that most instances people fail to really face that, even though it has an impact in how they are living their lives today. They'll fail to face it because they don't want to accept that at one point someone took advantage of me, and I had no say about that. At some point, someone made me feel insecure, and I had no say about it. So, in most instances, you find that why each and every person is really failing to reach at that point of accepting what had happened to them, and they're in denial, is they don't want to face the pain. But then, if there is something that I've learned, is how when you want to plant a seed, you first have to eat the outer part, then get the seed that is inside and put it in the soil and plant it and water it. So what actually happens is that you discover that for there to be healing, if there's something that I've learned, is you have to be at a point where you go back in time, get that child that you lost on that day, and getting that child simply means you going back, facing those memories that you're scared of facing, you going back, reaching at a point where you say, I want to forgive this person in as much as they had hurt me. It means you going back at that same day where that incident happened. Yes, you say you don't want to remember the memory, but healing also comes with you going to that particular day, reliving that memory, rethinking about that memory, and crying and grieving over it. To act, no, I'm strong. Nothing wrong with you going back to that moment, accepting that what was done to you was wrong, grieving about what happened in that moment to you. I feel like that's the best way to find healing. I feel like healing cannot come without you feeling the pain. I feel like, I'll give an example of a wound. You hate yourself. After hating yourself, you discover that if you're acting like the one way or the other, you infection might hurt you in one way or the other. So when you get you have a wound, what do? You put spirit or you put salt, and you putting that spirit and that salt simply means it's even going to hurt more than the actual pain that you felt when you had that wound. So it means that you have to be willing to accept to go through that pain once again, because you have to accept that, okay, I'm going, this memory, I've been blocking it out of my mind and the like, but then this is the time where I've been given, I need to go back, claim back the child that I had lost that day. And claiming back that child means accepting that you were ahead, crying and grieving over it.
And so well said. So well said. So you're writing 4 books, girl, or you've written. I'm just like, wow. What are your books about?
The first one is about women. The first one I actually dedicated it to women. I want it to be something that's about women. It's a book that is talking about, how I'll give an example of women who usually have maybe children before they get married, and are like, there's that aspect where society views them in a certain way. But then, if there's something that I've learned is that you shouldn't let something that happens to you define you. You shouldn't let something that happens to you define you. My point is, what actually happens is that you find most instances, uh, women, when certain things happen to them, like maybe they dropped out of school, maybe they had a child before it was time, and then they'll fail to really walk in society confidently because they're like, oh, this happened to me, this happened to me. But then this book is creating that platform where you're able to know that I'm imperfect, but in as much as I'm imperfect, I will embrace my imperfection and live my life with these imperfections. And instead of letting these imperfections really bring me down, I'll get these imperfections and they'll build me up. So that one's for women. Yeah, that's the one focusing on women. Then there's also another one focusing on self-development. Um, Actually, I started writing it last year, where there was a time where I thought maybe self-development is something that just happens a day, and boom, you discover and develop yourself. But then with time, I realized that it's like literally each and every day you are discovering something new about yourself. Like, you find that you are evolving into the person that you are today is not the person that you were yesterday. So it's like the development is taking place each and every day. So instead of us like blaming ourselves when we make mistakes, we're like, no, I made a mistake, but I really want to be fully developed. And what we should take self-development and discovery as a journey that each and every day we embark on. Then the other one is focusing on it's focusing on the aspect of relationships, how to really build relationships, how to really know how to understand your partner, and it's basically built on relationship. Then the other one is focusing on men. You discover that as I was doing my research, there was a point where I reached that you find actually in Zambia, I think it was last year or this year, when they introduced that a man can also be raped. So you find that even men undergo sexual abuse, even men undergo harassment, but then they don't really come out because they're like, oh no, it will make me feel that way, to make me feel that way. And even our Zambian courts, I think they just implemented that. I think that was last year or last year. There wasn't provision. So like if you are a man actually long time ago, you like the needs of men have been hidden, and the only thing that we view men to see is, no, men are strong, men are tough, men are like that. But then we are forgetting that they are human beings, and they also need that aspect of emotional support. In as much as we are saying, no, they are strong, they can stand, the fact comes to it always that they are also human beings, and at one point or the other they also need emotional support. Yes, yes.
Wow. I'm so impressed. I'm just so impressed. I love it. And I love the passion that you have for it. I think what's so intriguing for me is the healing that you've gone through. You can tell when someone hasn't healed, when you're still very bitter, very angry. But even for you to just write a book that's specifically focusing on men and, giving them that space, that platform, that's, to say that I have also been through something, this has happened to me, for me, that is just such a big sign of how much healing you have personally gone through to be able to look at a man and say, and, have compassion for them and, love them and all. And I think that's such a blessing. I think it's such a blessing. Yeah. So as we're winding down, I have 4 questions for you, and I'd love for you to just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. So the first one is, what are you rooted to?
God.
Yeah, you're rooted to God. Okay. And then what are your favorite ways to nourish your mind, your body, and your soul?
Writing.
And then do you have a weakness that has now become a superpower?
Yes.
What is it?
My weakness used to be low self-esteem, but it changed to confidence.
I love it. I love it. Okay, and then the last one is, what do you know as a certainty?
What do I know as certainty? That my future is bright.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love it. All right, Lydia, please tell everybody, how can they find you? Where do they get more information about you? Like, when are we expecting these books? How do we buy them? All of those things. So how do we get to follow what you are doing?
Okay, how you are able to get to follow what I'm doing? I have 2 Facebook pages. A Facebook. Okay, so the first one is building godly relationship, and it's one that's usually always active. It's very much active. Then there is suicide. There is one that talks about suicide. There's one that talks about suicide, which is breaking free from silence. It talks about suicide. Then my Facebook user is Lydia Mwansa. Then also I have, I think, yes, even my email as well. It's Lydia Mwansa at gmail.com. Then also I think for now just that. Then for the books, I'm planning on publishing them the first 4 months of 2024. Yes, I'm taking a leap of faith.
I love it. I love it.
Yes.
All righty. Well, I have no doubt that your future is very bright. Thank you so, so much for coming and sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, and sharing your healing journey, because I think people need to hear that you don't have to stay in the pain. You don't have to stay with the bitterness and the anger. Like, it can actually leave you and you can be living a different type of way. So I think that alone is such a powerful story, and I'm so grateful that you're able to share it. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate you, and we will be following you.
Thank you very much as well. I really appreciate for the opportunity you gave me to really share my story. I really do appreciate.
To get a fuller extent and understanding of Lydia's story, I recommend you go read it on the Africana Woman blog. It is called I Find Beauty in My Scars. I will add a link in the show notes, okay? So just go to our blog. Just read the story. Read the story. And what I learned from Lydia is that there is no one way of healing. For me, I went through trauma therapy with a psychologist. Lydia found complete healing through Christ. She has never been to counseling. She has never sat down with a counselor. But when you hear her, you can hear it. You can see her light. It is like there is a light that is beaming from her, and she is of a light spirit, not held down by burdens. I have no doubt her future is bright. So if you struggle with unforgiveness, even for what you deem is unforgivable, I want you to know there is liberty in forgiveness. think about it. So please find Lydia on Facebook at Lydia Mwansa. Let her know you heard her on the Africana Woman mic. Give her her roses and say thank you for being so brave and wise. The best way that you can help Africana Woman is to share the podcast, share the story for the women whose childhood was stolen, for the parents who want to protect their children. Share this episode. You can find us across all socials at Africana Woman. And the Africana Woman podcast is part of the Africana Woman Network. My name is Chulu, your host. Speak to you in the next